Hey, glad you're here for another FEC Okeechobee podcast, and we're going to finish up the conversation that was started a couple of weeks ago with the greatest commandment, love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, and then the second one that is like it, love your neighbor as yourself. But there's another part to this conversation as well. Where you expressed a moment ago you weren't as familiar with this part of the conversation.
I thought you were going to ask me what it was, but that's your job.
Yeah, that's my job to tell you because you said you didn't know. So remember, there was a scribe, a teacher of religious law, that asked him this question about this commandment because they were debating this all the time. And then here comes this guy asking, Jesus answers, and then this teacher replies after that. And that starts in verse 32. It says, the teacher of religious law replied, well said, teacher, you have spoken the truth by saying that there is only one God and no other. And I know it is important to love Him with all my heart and all my understanding and all my strength, and to love my neighbor as myself. This is more important than to offer all of the burnt offerings and sacrifices required in the law. And this is a key point. In verse 34, Jesus replies to him. Realizing how much the man understood, Jesus said to him, you are not far from the kingdom of God. And after that, no one dared to ask him any more questions. Like that last part too. Because it's like, yeah, we ask him stuff, he gives really good answers. Let's just stop because it's making us look dumb. Mm-hmm. Because, the Pharisees, one of their deals was we want to stump Jesus. Like, it's what was the old show they used to watch all the time when I was a kid? Win Ben Stein's Money. Do you remember watching that?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, Ben Stein was like a legitimate, like Mensa level genius. And he would be in this, he had his money and you tried to win his money from him on a quiz show. So they were trying to win Jesus' money, but he stumped them every single time and just beat them to death. So this guy understands something though, and that's why Jesus responds to him as he does in verse 34, where he says, I know it's important to love Him with all my heart, all my understanding, all my strength, and love my neighbor as myself. This is more important than to offer all the burnt offerings and sacrifices in the world. So Jesus went through all of their religious rituals. Because, the Jews have a couple of religious rituals. You bet. Especially when the temple was still up and running and there was sacrifice happening. There was a religious holiday festival celebration for every day of the week. It is, you read in the Old Testament all these different special religious holiday celebrations that were taking place across the whole calendar. Was a ton. And then plus they had all of the different rituals, from the washing of the hands to all of the Sabbath rituals to the sacrificial things. It was intense. And I'm sure you know that as well. So here, Jesus talks to this guy, and this guy kind of sees through all that. And he looks at it and he says that those two things you talked about are more important than all the rituals.
It's not like it was a mystery, though. If you look in the Old Testament, there are moments where God makes that clear in Ezekiel, Jeremiah, like some of the prophets. He clearly says, you are giving me these burnt offerings, but they stink to me because of the sin that you're still committing, because their hearts were not pure and clean. So obviously, that was more important.
But it wasn't for the Pharisees. They didn't care about that. They cared about their religious ritual.
But I think that it's easy to say that about them, but when you're deceived, you don't know that you were deceived. Mm-hmm. And they were deceived by their own practices, their own hearts. In their minds, they were righteous.
Yeah. But here's Jesus telling them the whole time they're not. And so as Christians, we have to be able to step outside of our own rituals, right? Christians, do we have rituals to the level that the Jewish people in the Old Testament and here in this New Testament during the gospel period? No, we don't. We don't have that level. But do we have some? You bet. And for some folks, that's a hill that you just climb up on and die, are our rituals. I mean, can you think of some rituals that Christians have?
I don't know. I don't know what you're talking about.
Some religious,
Could you explain?
some
what in your
religious
mind?
activity that people feel must be done.
Like going to church on Sunday?
Okay, going to church on Sunday.
But not everyone thinks that's an absolute.
A lot of people think it's an absolute. I run across people that think that the only place you can have church is in the sanctuary/worship center. I even have a problem with the name sanctuary. Sanctuary is a very bad description. Sanctuary was
Makes
that.
it seem like that's the dwelling place.
Yes, that's like an Old Testament bring over when we talk about the temple and the dwelling place of God. No, that's just a room. It's no different than Walmart. And I've walked through that with people. I'm like, it's just a building with four walls, dude. It's where we may gather most of the time, but there's nothing spiritual or special about it. And some people, you got to have church there. The actual order of the service can become a tradition/ritual of we have to do these things in the service in this way.
So is that what you had in your mind when you said that?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I kind of see what you mean. I guess I just feel like in today's Christian culture, for evangelical Christians, it's so relaxed that I almost feel like it's anti-ritual. And
Depends on which parts of the evangelical church you roll into as to if that's the case or not. But even what we would consider the more relaxed, they still have their way of doing things that can become very ingrained and become tradition even to the point of ritual.
mm-hmm. I don't know though that's not bad to have tradition and
Mm-hmm.
ritual. It's that you should
I don't think it is
love
either.
the Lord above those things.
Yes.
They can't be what connects you to God, but they can help remind you. I think it was a while back, but it was called, one of the books that I was reading was Celebration of Discipline.
I remember that book I had. That was a textbook. That's the word. That was a textbook that we used in seminary.
Yeah, and a lot of them that he goes through in each chapter, all of the different spiritual disciplines, fasting,
Mm-hmm.
pray, like all of these different things that you do, they can be ritualistic, but the purpose is for your heart then to be reminded,
Mm-hmm.
to give you that reminder, to be submissive, to fall on your face towards God. If on Sunday morning I wake up and I know it's Sunday, so I'm going to listen to praise and worship, I want my focus to be on the Lord, that may be ritualistic in that it's a special day that I set aside to focus on Him, and so that especially on that day I want my focus to center on Him and first thing in the morning, but that's a good thing.
I don't think it is a bad thing. But what had happened for the Pharisees was the religion and the ritual had usurped God. And I've seen that. I've seen that face to face in churches where the people in the church were more concerned with the ritual of how we do this than they were actually the mission of God. Like, even though what we're doing may be a hindrance to other people coming to know Christ or being able to effectively and easily be a part of our church, we'd rather keep doing that anyway because this is more comfortable for us. This is how we want to do it. And so the focus goes off of God and people and the Great Commission onto what we like and makes us feel comfortable. The Pharisees liked it. They liked it. They liked the comfortability of it. They liked the rules.
Source of power.
Yes, it was their source of power and prestige. And so people want to keep that feeling sometimes instead of saying, what is the most effective way to help people reach the God of the Bible? And what's the most effective way to worship? What's the most effective thing our church can do to be a Great Commission church? It can become more about, well, this is how we do it. And I'm like, well, you can go down that road, but y'all let me know when the church closes down, and if you want to maybe sell your property, let me know. I'll see if we want to make a purchase on it, because that's what happens. The Pharisaical model collapsed. It collapsed, and Jesus was warning them the whole time. It's not about your ritual. It's not about your religion. It's not about what you do. It's about the God that you worship.
So how can a person look at what they're doing and determine if it's the right type of ritual? Like, how would you know?
Here's how I come across with that, and how I think is what you're doing a sacred cow to you? And I'm sure you've heard that phrase before, sacred cow. Is how something has to be done in your church or in your personal life. If that changes to try to do something that will be more effective, is that a problem? Okay. If the answer is yes, then you've honed in too far on the religious act or the ritual instead of what it is supposed to accomplish. So sometimes people are unable to step back and say, wait, what I'm doing or what we're doing is not working. But we've been doing it for a long time, and we're just going to keep doing it. People can't step back and see that. And I think that is and all of us can let ourselves get drug into that. So, is what we're doing going to actually, is it more about the thing, or is it more about who we're worshiping? Because we get real comfortable in what we like and what we want, and sometimes that could be to the actual detriment of the spread of the gospel. I watch it in churches all the time. You talk about the percentage of churches in our country that are declining. One of the reasons they're declining is not an inability, but an unwillingness to look at the methods and to possibly change those methods to be able to more effectively reach the community around them with the actual truth of the biblical, doctrinally sound Word of God.
Well, and the Pharisees themselves, they were not encumbered by obvious sin. The sins that they were committing were
the sins of almost pride. Pride was a big one for them.
And they weren't focused on what God was actually doing. Now, I think to their defense in some way, it was a completely new thing. Christ, the idea of Christ, the idea of his salvation, like offering salvation, offering it to Gentiles, all of these things was a mystery. It talks about how it was a mystery to the Jews. So in their defense, it was kind of a crazy thing that they weren't seeing how God was working. So even if a Christian today thinks that they are in a right relationship with God, but they're not focused on how God is actually working, how God is actually moving, then in a way they can be blind just like the Pharisees. For example, if you see that, or you're so encumbered with your own, not even rituals inside the church, but if you're so encumbered with your own schedule, timekeeping, I'm so focused on what I'm doing and what I'm pursuing day in and day out, that you're not looking to see how God is moving and working in the people around you, then you're being blinded also with your own selfish pursuits.
Sure.
I think that's really hard, because that is the nature of all humans.
We're naturally selfish. I talked about that in my sermon some the other day. You don't have to teach a child to be selfish and want to take a toy away from another kid, and then that kid wants to take something away from them to get them back, so we're all even again, right? It's like a one-upsmanship. We watch it with Charlie sometimes and her friends. This is how it works, and you're like trying to share and do it right. It's very difficult. It's very difficult. So, we we get caught up in those things and we miss what God is doing. I think that's appropriate to say in our personal life or in our corporate life, as say like a church body. We get caught up in that and we're missing out on what's really important. And I'll push back a little bit with the Pharisees. They were absolute experts in the religious law and the prophets. And they totally missed Jesus.
Not all of them.
A few didn't, but the vast majority did. I mean, you have like Nicodemus and Joseph Arimathea, some of them, but the vast majority of them totally missed him.
Because
Even
they
though
were more concerned about what made them comfortable, what brought them, I don't know, earthly comfort, peace, status,
their deal, what they wanted.
If you take that into the person, I guess that's just how I kind of think of it in the personal lives of Christians today.
Mm-hmm.
I would say a lot of Christians miss out on maybe a new thing that God is wanting to do in their lives or in the lives of people that they are in contact with.
Because they're settled into their ritual of their life, of whatever that may be, even from a secular point of view.
They set boundaries. I'm willing, God, to do this, but I'm not willing to do that. I'm willing to give money to this missionary. I'm not going to be a missionary.
Mm-hmm.
I'm willing to pay money to this group of people that it's going to go spread the gospel. I'm not going to spread the gospel myself. That's a little too uncomfortable for me.
Like you think like, okay, I'll give money to the church and then I'll let them handle this. Like I'll let them tell my neighbor about Jesus even though they don't know my neighbor's name.
And I'm going to do all of the good things that Christians do. Go to church on Sunday. I'm going to read my Bible. I'm going to do all of these things and I'm going to feel self-righteous. But I'm not going to love you with my whole heart because I'm not going to give you and surrender in every way. Yeah,
that's a very interesting. Now, let me ask you this. This will be another interesting question to think about. Do you think that some people can get caught up in what you're talking about right there? The I go to church, I drop the money in the offering plate or the bucket or the offering box or whatever a church may have, however they may do that. I will go to Sunday school or small group. I'll do this thing. I'll participate in this over here. Do some people take those actions, those things that they do over and over, and substitute that for a real relationship with God, thinking they have salvation when they actually don't, because in their mind the stuff they were doing was going to cover them?
I think it's easy to fall prey to that. Yeah, I mean, even in my own life, like I'm speaking from experience. I know how uncomfortable it is when God calls you to something different. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times for myself, he has to hit me with it from several different angles to make it completely obvious that that's what he's calling me, to give this thing up, to focus on this, to die to self in this area. And it's uncomfortable, so he has to make it obvious. He has to continually work towards that surrender for me. I think that, and I've mentioned before, though, that if you're talking about things that we put our faith in for salvation rather than a true relationship with God, I think it can be that. And also for evangelicals, it can be the sinner's prayer. Mm-hmm. I prayed this prayer.
Yeah, that's very ritualistic.
Very ritualistic. I said this. I asked God to forgive me of my sins. He doesn't really have all of my heart, but I've got a checkbox for heaven. I'm okay. Mm-hmm. And that's all I care about.
Yeah.
I'm going to live for today for my own pleasure and seek my own gain. And
I got God over here on the side.
For eternity.
Yeah, God's over here on the side. I'm gonna do my thing. I'm gonna do what I want. I keep up appearances.
So a person like that, if they're singing praises on Sunday morning, is that a sweet sacrifice to the Lord, or is that something that he hears or he chooses not to even listen to?
Yeah.
Sort of like the sacrifices of the Israelites.
Yeah, because we don't make sacrifices like physically, but our worship like, especially like our, think about corporate worship, there's an element of that to it in this praise to God. And sacrifice as part of that was a submission and praise to God. Especially certain sacrifices. Some of them were different. You think of because we always think about the animal blood sacrifice, but that was just part of it. There were multiple different kinds of sacrifices that signified and meant different things. There was the drink offering, who Paul talks about. I pour my life out as a drink offering. There were grain offerings. There was all different kinds of. They burned incense. They did all kind of things.
Ultimately, more about your heart.
Yeah.
Like even for myself, I know that I strive to have right relationship with the Lord. But there are times when I might do an act of service, and in my heart, I'm just kind of grumbling about the situation, or maybe I'm not thrilled about, okay, I'm going to do this, I'm going to help this person, maybe help a friend, and maybe my attitude on the inside isn't that great. That's not honoring to God.
I agree.
That's not glorifying Him, because He's looking at my heart. Other people may look at my actions, but He's looking at my heart. And if I'm not giving everything, doing things the way that He wants to, then it's not.
Yeah. It's it's just we're going through emotion there, and I struggle with that sometimes too. Having to needing to do something and being like, oh man, I really don't want to do this right now. And having a problem with having the right heart about stuff. It can be hard.
There's not value in being faithful even when you don't feel like being faithful.
I think there is.
Yes, there is value in that. But is it glorifying to God as much as it could be if we also had our hearts in the right place, if we were joyfully doing those things? That is a sweet sacrifice to God.
Yeah.
That is truly an offering to Him when we have so little to give. It's like, we could ask, sometimes we joke with Charlie, like, just take your love, I could force her to give me a hug, but if she voluntarily seeks my affection, it's sweet to me, and it's good, and that's how, our reactions to God can glorify Him, where they can, we can be out of alignment in so many different ways.
Yeah, and God's looking for way more than just the actions. Man looks at the outside, God looks at the heart. So God doesn't want to see us just going through the motions of worship or the motions of being obedient. God wants the obedient heart behind it.
Above everything.
Yes,
else.
that's the most important thing. Because when your heart and mind is right, the actions are just going to naturally come. That's just how that works. So, and God understands that. And the Pharisees' heart and mind weren't right. They just had the actions, and they saw the actions as enough.
And they were satisfied with that.
They were totally satisfied with just having these actions that at the end of the day weren't enough. They were just things they did. And I think they thought that their legalism would make them right with God. I think they were sincere. I don't think that they thought, we're just going to do this for show. I think they really thought it. But they were so mistaken that the heart that Christ was looking for was not the heart of the judgmental Pharisee. It was the heart of the woman that came and knelt down behind Him and anointed His feet with the oil and wiped her hair. Dried her tears off of His feet with her hair. That was that inward thing that these Pharisees didn't have or didn't understand.
But she did that because she understood what she had gained from Him.
Yes.
She understood her position in relation to the Lord, nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And in their minds, they were righteous through these other acts.
Yes, they were righteous through their acts. They were made righteous because of the things they did. We're not made righteous because we show up at church on Sunday morning, or we put a certain amount of money in, or we sing in the choir, or we teach a Sunday school class, or we do any of those things. We're made right with God by a relationship with Him and a heart that has changed. And the Pharisees totally missed that. Totally missed it. So I appreciate you guys being here today. Thank you for joining us for our podcast, and we look forward to seeing you soon. Have a great day.